This chapter is another one that's full of clasps and curtains and cubits. And yet, because we've been on this journey with the Israelites for days now, we've got eyes to see what is really going on in this chapter. It is really a chapter that is full of hearts that have been moved by the goodness of God, full of people who are seeking to serve Him with whatever they have, whether that's much or little. And the effect of it all is deeply moving. In this chapter then, we see lots of hard work and lots of generous giving, but again, do not miss the fact that the engine behind all this progress is love and not law. It all comes from a deep internal desire and not an external desire or compulsion. It's exactly the same with the Christian life, isn't it? Christians are not under the threat of the law, they are ruled by love. But what that actually amounts to is that Christians should therefore be more generous, more loving, more hardworking, more God-glorifying than they otherwise would be. Love is a more powerful engine than law. That is what we see in this chapter. So, verse 2, Then Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord had given ability and who was willing to come and do the work. See those two aspects that have to come together here. The person must be inwardly compelled. They must do it because they are willing, but they must also be competent for the task. You can't just have people who are willing but have no ability. That kind of everyone gets a trophy mentality, well, it might seem loving and inclusive and encouraging, but actually we're not playing around here. This is the construction of God's own tabernacle. We've seen in 1,000 different ways that it's a picture of the very glory of God, and therefore it can't just be slung together shoddily by people who, in all honesty, don't have the skill to carry out the task. They have a place to serve, but it's simply not this place. But at exactly the same time, if the people who have got these kind of skills and gifts and abilities do not love the God that they are called to serve, then they too must not be pressed into service. They will answer to Him directly for how they have or haven't used the gifts that they've been given for His glory. But refreshingly enough, in Exodus 36, we don't hear any stories of people who are reluctant or resistant to use what they do have for the glory of God. Again, as we saw yesterday, every member of the body here is willing to play its particular part, and those who don't have these specialised skills, they don't get their backs up for having not been chosen, they don't slink off in a grump or sit there with their arms folded. No, they get to work, doing whatever they can do. And so see that the people then bring free will offerings morning after morning in verse 3. We know that these are more than just offerings of material. We know that these are labours of love. Why did the gifts come in the morning? Well, we don't know, but presumably because the people are working through the day, perhaps even long into the evening, and then when the sun rises, they are able to bring their now completed offerings that they've been working on through the night. Think of the spun goat's hair and the fabric multicoloured yarn. Well, in verse 5, the skilled workers said to Moses, the people are bringing more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded to be done. And Moses then has the rare but joyful duty of having to tell the people of God to stop being so generous. They already have more than enough material to finish the job. He says no man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. And so the people were restrained from bringing more because what they already had was more than enough to do all the work. Amazing, hey? In the book of 2 Corinthians, Paul writes to encourage Christians that he wants them to give, but he wants them to give willingly. He says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. You know, the broader point is that God actually doesn't need your resources. He's the king of all creation, of course. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He's not poor and in need of your money. And so, if money is your God, well, someone's going to have to pry it out of your hands in order to get you to give anything. But if Jesus is your God, if Christ is your treasure, well, you'll see money then as merely a tool which can be used for the task of making him known. So if that is true, then it is not just a duty, but it's a true and deep joy to be able to offer something that can be used in His service, and to see God use whatever gift we have as part of His master plan to make His glory known. The wonderful thing about God being God is that He does not need us. And yet the wonderful thing about God being our Father is that He chooses to use our free will offerings. He uses our efforts for His glory. If you like, He takes us to work with Him so that we can see what He is doing and how He will use our small contribution as part of His grand plan. Truly, He doesn't need us, but He delights in using us. And so we should rejoice and be glad to give.